Why vegans hunt. Wildlife artist and committed vegan Katie Hargreaves tells us why she wants to pull the trigger.
I think we've got more in common than we'd like to realise.
Yeah, 100%.
Little packets of Christmas. I join Tim Maddams as he conjures up a delicious game meat treat and talks about the Country Foood Trust. Call the cops. Ben joins the Northumbria rural crime team on a poacher patrol operation. And free shooting, our field tester community shooting experiment, steel versus barrels, is in full swing in the lead up to Christmas. We have news, we have hunting YouTube. Welcome to Fieldsports Britain. It is a brave decision to start sketching in front of a professional artist.
There's quite a big bum on it.
That's the head.
Paul Childerley is trying to illustrate where Katie needs to put her shot on one of his Chinese water deer.
Okay, right. So, come up. Obviously, yeah, we talked about yesterday, in that area there. So when you come up, I'll talk you through it when we're out there.
Yeah. I'm vegan, but I am pro-conservational hunting. I think it's really important that it happens, and if it happens ethically and sustainably and properly, then I think that it's right.
The little deer is the reason she is here today. Paul saw her first charcoal of a CWD for sale in a gallery in London and says it is the best representation he has seen.
Wow.
We met about 4.5 years ago in Beretta Gallery. There was like a rifle launch, and I somehow managed to have my first exhibition in that. So I was just showing a couple of pieces, and that's kind of where my business kicked off as well. So he was there at the beginning.
So we liked it, but he didn't buy it. This is the thing that's slightly embarrassing and awkward, but the fact that he didn't buy it.
Not yet.
Today, she gets to see her first one in the flesh.
You can carry it. Nothing in there. Okay, so we'll load it when we get out there, okay? Just stick it on your shoulder. Other way.
Paul is partway through his cull, and Katie wants to be part of it. That's not the sort of thing you'd expect from a vegan, but she has her reasons, which we will explore in a bit. Now, Paul expects the bucks to start rutting in late November and December. It's not just the visible indicators of chasing and fighting, they make a noise too.
These last few days of the frost, they just started chasing a little bit. I just did a little bit of clicks. So I want to hear
the clicks.
Pressure. What's that? Actually, he's like that. As they're running. Bucks.
Ventriloquist. Got the gear. Do it again. You move, your lips don't move. Come on.
It's clicking noise, basically.
Does it attract them?
No, the bucks do it aggressive. It's like an aggressive thing.
Oh, okay. I was expecting loads of those to just...
Yeah.
Story of his life.
Oh dear.
So no, it doesn't actually do anything,
It just
bring him in, doesn't antagonise another buck.
If you're close to, if you could do it loud, I can't do it very loud, but they do it quite loud. So it's like an ultrasonic sound, if you know what I mean. And they'd be like 150 yards away, and you can hear it quite clear as a bell. And they do it when they're like chasing, when they sort of almost when they won a bar, they're like chasing, they click, so they show the sign that they won. But yeah.
So it's like a victory sound.
It's a bit, yeah. It's like dominant sound, yeah. But you normally sort of hear it out there, and you can almost pinpoint where it's coming from, and you know there's a buck in that spot.
There's nothing suitable on this part of the ground, but then Paul spots an older buck with broken tusks. He needs it gone, as they tend to become more aggressive when they're like that. Paul has left his new Sacco S20 in the cabinet today. For novices, he likes using the Sacco 85 synthetic stainless in 22-250.
Safety off when you get onto him. bugger. That's right, no stress. Okay, keep going sideways. He was a perfect buck. He was an old buck, totally broken on one side, and he had a 3/4 of tusk on the other side. And on his rump here, he had a big, massive load of hair missing, where obviously he'd been fighting a lot. So he'd have been perfect one to take, just as they're coming up to the rut as well. Unfortunately, as we rolled and crawled, he got the better of us, and then the cameraman come running around the back. You know, I'm not going to blame you, David. Basically, the time was done. It wasn't meant to be. So.
Over on the other side of a game crop, Paul spots another animal suitable for his management plan. We get into position and wait.
One real close. One really close.
Then a youngster pops out just in front of us.
Good steal. See it, David? We'll shoot that one. That's perfect. Come right onto him. You comfortable? Whoop! No rush. Squeeze it off gently. It's right. It's good. It's right. It's good. Dead. Done. Seriously?
I'm not convinced I did that very well.
You did, honestly. No problem at all. The animal dropped on the spot. We'll have a look in a minute, but
It's still...
yeah, they will move a bit. No problem. It's dead.
Mixed of emotions, I imagine, Katie.
Yeah. I'm worried that I've heard it and it's not.
No, no. Okay.
You don't need to shoot it again.
No, 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 it's dead. Honestly.
Katie worries she's messed up, but she has made a perfect shot.
It's a perfect shot. Well done. Young buck. So a good one to take off. As you can see, we've got lots and lots and lots, so we have to shoot a few to reduce the numbers.
I would eat it, but I wouldn't kill it for the meat. So I killed it because it's part of the conservation effort towards helping the species, helping the surrounding habitats to support the numbers of deer. And because the meat is a byproduct, I'd be happy to eat it. I know that I've killed it in the proper fashion. I haven't just gone and killed something for fun. It's, it had a reason. And then the enjoyment of it and the meat is kind of a byproduct, I think. So
I'm very impressed actually you've done this today, because after me killing the wasp yesterday, and there's a big massive queen wasp in the shoot lodge, and we have a problem with them in there, and of course I see it. I stood on it and I humanely dispatched it as well I thought, but obviously it's still moving, so I was in nerves, but Katie told me off.
I don't think it was nerves, I think it wasn't quite dead, and he just was like, yeah, that's done. I was like, it's still moving.
So that's why the doubt about this one this morning then, you've been damaged by him already.
Yeah, so I basically forced him to
You didn't believe him?
No.
All good.
It's clear Katie was dealing with lots of different thoughts and emotions throughout the stalking experience. But it is a responsibility she wants to take on. Venison is a byproduct. She wants to reduce the grazing pressure on the local environment.
ultimately vegans are trying to reduce suffering of animals and to protect wildlife, protect ecosystems. So I think in that way, like, gamekeepers have the same objectives, right? It's like there are so many parallels, and I think sometimes the two sides, they kind of conflict.
You know, supermarkets and stuff are so good at making meat not look like an animal. It's actually really kind of nice to see it properly done, and like you have that connection, you know what it was.
Right, huge tangent. Christmas cards.
So all of my cards are printed on recyclable and recycled paper. So I'm basically trying to be as like sustainable in my business as possible. So I'm, you know, using recycled card and envelopes to send them in and stuff. So
Katie's work covers game species from all over the world. It's not just the UK stuff, such as this roebuck, photographed by Dan Beardsmore, and her newest Chinese water deer, taken from a shot by Dean White. Katie's motivations are exactly the same as wildlife managers, to keep a natural balance. That doesn't exist without human intervention, or rather hunter intervention. So if you love your planet and don't want to pull the trigger, try and understand why we do. Katie gets it. And if you'd like to see more of Katie's work, visit her website, katiehargreavesart.com. Thank you, Paul, and particularly to Katie, making her debut on Fieldsports Channel, like Daniel in the Lion's Den. I've always felt that we shooters and hunters have a lot in common with vegans, if it weren't for their bloody mindedness. And here's one who wants to be a player, not a spectator, when it comes to keeping nature in balance. Before we head to the news, if you head over to our sister channel Field Tester, you'll be able to hear Paul talking through his winter warmer wrap, Shooter King's eye heat gilet. He does feel the cold, that boy. And so now from chill to the chilling, it's David on the Fieldsports Channel News Stump.
This is Fieldsports Channel News. If the UK leaves the EU, the gun trade expects a low World Trade Organization tariff on gun imports and an even lower one on gun parts.
For importing arms and ammunition, there are tariffs that need to be paid. For arms, it's 3.2%, and for ammunition or the parts of ammunition, it's 2.7%. Interestingly, it's 2.7% also for parts of firearms. So for your repairs and those parts, it's a slightly lower tariff on the arm itself.
However, clothing will see WTO tariffs up to 12%. It'll become difficult to take your dog over the UK border, and there is no clear picture about venison prices.
We're just going to have to wait until the 1st of January and see what happens. I mean, if I prepared for everything I was supposed to prepare for, then yeah, it would have been a massive waste of my time, effort and money. So we're just going to have to wait and see.
The Prime Minister's fiancée, Carrie Simons, is Peter's Person of the Year. The animal rights group says Boris Johnson's partner's activism gets results after she campaigned against people using monkeys to pick coconuts. She also wants to ban Asian wet markets, the fur trade, trail hunting, guns, trophy hunting, and her alleged intervention over the badger cull landed her in court. MPs are concerned her influence could affect policy. British big game hunters are expecting an announcement on a ban on trophy imports this week. Carrie Simons' friend, Zach Goldsmith, made a Lord so he could keep his job as DEFRA Minister after he lost his seat in Parliament, is expected to push through a ban on the imports of some African trophy animals, ignoring evidence that trophy hunting benefits conservation. Meanwhile, Nordic Safari Club is asking Goldsmith and other prominent animal rights activists if they'll put their money where their mouth is and buy 150 elephants. Botswana is selling the animals and says they will have to be shot immediately if no buyer is found. So far, the only bidders are hunters.
It's free for all to place bids on these elephants. The tender is open until the 29th of January. And it's going to be really interesting to see big animal rights NGOs like PETA or Humane Society step up to the plate and use some of the millions and millions of dollars they raise each year for actual nature conservation. Buy these elephants and show us your solution, please. We are all very interested in seeing these non-hunting solutions that you always argue are better than hunting and culling.
The family behind the fashion chain H&M is banning trail hunting across 16,000 acres it owns across Wiltshire and Berkshire. The ban is the latest move in a media campaign by ITV News to try to force landowners to ban trail hunting in England. Former H&M chairman Stefan Persson is behind the move. His father, Erling Persson, founded the shop when his Hennies brand bought the Maritz Wideforce hunting goods retailer in Sweden. Anti-shooters who spot hen harriers on the Denton Park estate in Wharfdale can thank gamekeepers for the conservation work they've done to bring them back. A story in the Yorkshire Post suggests shooting is banned at Denton Park. The newspaper quotes convicted animal rights extremist Luke Steele saying it's fantastic to see these magnificent birds of prey choosing Denton Moor to make their home. However, the area is thoroughly keepered with enough predator control to allow hen harriers to thrive. Scottish grouse moors generated more than £9 million worth of business for local companies before and after lockdown. The Aberdeen Press and Journal reports figures that back up the findings of a Scottish Government commissioned report into socio-economic effects of grouse shooting by Scotland's Rural College and the James Hutton Institute. However, that could change. The Scottish Government's proposed grouse moor licensing scheme has dented confidence significantly, and people in the sector are in limbo, says Scotland's regional moorland groups. Chris Packham is being investigated by the fundraising regulator, according to an online newspaper. The Country Squire says the regulator confirms that it is looking into the BBC television presenter's claims that tigers donated to his girlfriend's zoo were rescued and that their former owners abused them. The regulator initially refused to investigate the celebrity, but after Country Squire presented additional evidence, it changed its mind. The website accuses Packham of soliciting donations for the tigers based on false information. A gamekeeper has started a petition to increase sentencing for poaching hares. Edward Coles, who also writes for Shooting Times, says punishment for using long dogs on hares and deer is not fit for purpose, as repeat offenders are not deterred by the small fines. He is a gamekeeper on the Papisford Shoot in Cambridgeshire and wants the offenders put in prison. 4 men arrested on suspicion of stealing dozens of dogs have been released on bail while inquiries continue. Police raided a site in Worcestershire after a call from a member of the public who reported suspicious activity. Officers discovered a vehicle containing dogs and a large amount of cash. More dogs were found in a second vehicle. A total of 44 dogs were recovered. They are currently being assessed by vets and local dog rescue centres. Arizona's Wild Game Commission has voted unanimously to ban trail cameras. The commission argues that trail cams make hunting too easy and are not in the spirit of fair chase. Nevada issued a ban on trail cams during the hunting season for similar reasons. Supporters of the ban also say they are concerned about the growing trade in animal location data. According to the Go Hunt website, there is still time to voice opinion to the Game Commission. There's a petition against it on change.org. Electric fences put up in a park to stop elephants doesn't seem to be working. This elephant was spotted simply sliding underneath the fence at the park in Addo. According to the ranger Adrian van Rensburg, the fences are put up to stop the elephants taking over waterholes so other animals have a chance. And finally, a nursing home in Canada has declared open season on its staff. Its carers are dressing up as deer and have supplied residents with Nerf guns. Photos on Facebook show the staff taking cover behind Christmas trees while the elderly residents take shots at them. The accompanying post by Wikwemikong Nursing Home, north of Toronto, says, "We heard it was open season, so we gave it a shot." Thanks to Steve Kearney for that. You are now to date with Fieldsports Channel News. Stalking the stories, fishing for facts.
Thank you, David. Coming up, Tim Maddams has a Christmas recipe idea while Tim Woodward from the Country Foood Trust tries not to get in the way. First, we're offering free shooting. That got your attention. For shooters within reach of Austin Shooting Ground in Nottinghamshire, we are back up to speed post-lockdown with our steel versus barrels challenge. Thanks to the ground, to Ely cartridges, CCI clays and Yildiz shotguns, we want your help to put thousands of eco-wad steel shells down the barrel of this Yildiz Pro Black Sporter shotgun worth about £850. At different stages of this community science project, we're having the shotgun independently assessed to record just what impact the steel shot is having on the barrels. It's free and you will be helping us to answer one of the biggest questions in shooting. Now, another one. Are you feeling hungry?
We are going to make some venison and wild mushroom stuffed squashes.
Okay.
What do you think?
They look delicious.
Well, let's hope so. Could you just sort of sprinkle a little bit of olive oil on them? I'm going to sort of talk a little bit about venison, I think. I'm going to cook this venison with some cream and some brandy. It's quite an old-fashioned sort of recipe. It's quite, hearty, very autumnal, wintry, sort of pulling in the night and
Yep.
getting around the fire. I mean, I suppose if I was on Instagram, I'd probably have baked these slowly at the edge of my wood-burning stove or something in the sitting room.
Right.
As it is, we're going to use the kitchen because it's just a bit more comfortable and practical.
Perfect.
And venison, obviously, is something that we at the Country Food Trust have just decided is the go-to product of the moment for us, isn't it?
It is indeed, because we've been doing pheasant, haven't we, up to now?
A lot of pheasant, yes.
And now what we're doing is we're moving towards venison because, well, for two reasons. First of all, because we can feed children with it,
Yes.
and secondly, because there's quite a lot of supply of venison around at the moment.
So why can't children eat pheasant?
Good point, thank you for asking. The reason they can't at the moment is that however much...
They will cook quicker in the oven. Yeah.
The reason that we don't supply our pheasant-based products to children is that however hard we try and however much we try and extract the lead, there is still a chance of lead being in that food.
So I've got some wild mushrooms. I've got a little selection here. Some winter chanterelles, very much coming to the end. A few little chestnut mushrooms, some king oyster mushrooms. Just any old mushroom from the supermarket will do. Doesn't need to be anything particularly fancy, but just the more flavour we can get in there, the better it will be. Got some butter, some olive oil. I'm going to add quite a lot of onion, a couple of cloves of chopped garlic. I'm just going to start sweating that down and getting it going on the old stove there. Once it gets going, we'll add the venison. In the meantime, I'm just going to start getting some of these mushrooms chopped up. Some of the larger ones anyway. So I'm just going to put a little bit of fresh sage in there. You could use dried sage if you had it. Just some hard herbs really. You might go rosemary or savoury. A little bit of thyme. You know, this really is a beauty because even actually, if you didn't want to do it inside the squashes, maybe you've got some kind of squash-related phobia, you could just literally make this and serve it up with some rice or some noodles or something. So once that's sort of starting to really get a bit of flavour going, I'm going to put a little bit of salt, a bit of pepper. Obviously, you've got to have salt and pepper. Watch out for salt. Don't put too much salt in there. Terribly bad for you. Terribly bad for you. Although of course you can't live without it. So it's a bit of a mixed message on salt, really. But anyway,
Venison's quite lean meat, right?
very lean. But don't worry, because we're going to cover it in cream. You don't have to eat this recipe, do you? I mean, it's just one idea of many. So chucking in some wild mushrooms, get those sweating down in there as well. There's some winter chanterelles here. There's also some that we've carefully foraged from aisle 1 of the nearest supermarket, which is some nice king oyster mushrooms and some close cut little button mushrooms there. Very nice, delicious. Mushrooms and venison obviously go together very, very well. So this is kind of like almost sort of heading off into a stroganoff-y type territory, but not quite. And once you just let that sort of come down a little bit, we're going to add a little bit of flour, a little dash of brandy, some milk, some cream. It doesn't take very long to cook, right? It's going to go back in the oven once it's been done anyway, so we don't need to worry too much about it baking forever. So a little dash of flour just to help hold everything together. We don't want it to be too watery. There's probably a sort of specific recipe, but we're going reasonably freestyle on it today. It's quite a sweet one to look at. So you can see, it hasn't taken very long. I mean, chefs are terrible for saying that, aren't they? It hasn't taken very long to throw this together. It's all right if you happen to have the ingredients handy and you've chopped them up quickly and whatever. Even, I think, including shopping time, if you had the venison mince, you could put this together in 2 hours, unless you live a very long way from the supermarket. A little bit of this. I know, it looks really good, doesn't it? Can we make sure the rest of that ends up in my cup? Just let that sort of cook out. And the mistake that people make when they add alcohol, wine or brandy or anything like that to food is they then just start chucking in the next lot of ingredients, and you really need to let that cook down a bit. I'm going to add, some milk, roughly, I don't know, 100 ml, something like that, a couple hundred. And then I'm going to add a little bit of cream as well. You'll notice I've tried to keep the fat content down a bit by using milk and cream rather than just cream. And then once it's come up, we're going to put a little bit of mustard in there too. And you see all those lovely flavours that are produced down on the bottom of the pan. As soon as the milk hits that, the flavours all release from the bottom of the pan, and we start to really sort of head towards something quite exciting. A little bit of cream too. You could leave out the cream. It's very easy to leave out the milk as well, and the butter. You could do this with a little bit of olive oil, add the flour, use a bit of stock. It'd be very easy to sort of make this a lot lower on the calorie count if you wanted to. That's not everyone's obsession, is it? It's just some people's obsession. Some people still quite like a bit of cream. Hang on. I just want to put a little bit of French mustard in there as well. And stir that in, and then I'm going to just taste it. See if it's all right.
Would you like a teaspoon? Can I provide that for you? I need a roll.
You need a roll? Bread roll? Drum roll?
Spoon provided roll.
Yeah, spoon would be good. Thank you very much. Oh, the effort you make to help me out, it's just astonishing.
I do my best.
This is easy, right? Now, I'm not making that up. This is one of the most sort of uncomplicated, high impact recipes you could ever imagine. It actually tastes quite nice as well, so that's a relief.
Am I allowed to speak?
Of course you are. Just don't double dip, whatever you do.
I wouldn't.
It's a dangerous time for living in.
Oh, that is good.
All right, and now I'm just gonna take it off the heat, just gonna leave it until our squashes are ready. Can you get the pumpkins, the little squashes out of the oven for me? That would be helpful if you could do that. They should be nice and done now. I think your purpose in life is to feed people in need, Tim, and you're doing very well at it. How many have we fed so far?
So, as you know, we're trying to feed 1 million people in the first 5 years of the charity's existence. And this year we went whizzing through it. We're now 1.6 million. In fact, having started with 20,000 a year, right at the beginning, in the early days, 20,000 meals, this year we actually produced 1 million in 1 year.
That's amazing, isn't it?
Going to be more as well, it's 1 million. And the trustees of the charity have said, right, we've gone through the 1 million mark. Can we
have a holiday?
No, they haven't.
They haven't said that.
No. As you well know, they've said, could we now go to 1 million a year? So
Yes,
I have
yeah.
every confidence we'll do that.
Yeah, we're going to smash that, aren't we? That's not a problem at all. With continued support from generous people, that's not going to be a difficult thing to do. Sorry, just to drag it back to the dish a minute. The venison is pretty much ready, and now all I'm going to do now, and it's quite tricky this bit because you need chefy fingers, or you could just sort of, or just burn yourself. Yeah. Once I've just carefully cut the tops off these little squishes.
Yep.
Squashes, and then I'm gonna, yeah. And then I'm gonna gut these, a bit like a woodcock, a pumpkin. You know, you have to cook it whole, and then gut it afterwards. Do you want to take a bit longer though? Because
yeah, don't worry. Here's one I prepared earlier.
Oh, thank God. I thought you'd gone to turn it on your potter's wheel.
Nope.
You can save these seeds out of here. You know, you could do something with them, toast them up and put them in your next pesto or something like that, I suppose, if you wanted to. Just make sure you get most of them out. I mean, you don't need to be too pedantic. I mean, it is, at the end of the day, it's just a pumpkin seed. It's not going to hurt if you eat it. Oh, unless you've got, you know, a bad tooth or something. So just going to season them again, right? Because we do not want this to be bland. And although we season the outside of the squashes and those skins will be perfectly edible and delicious because we washed them before we started, we also don't want them to be, you know, sort of a bit rubbish. So extra seasoning in there. And then we're just going to get some hazelnuts, which I'm going to just start by just sort of bashing a little bit, and a few of them fly off across the kitchen. If that happens, don't worry, it's a perfectly normal part of life. Give them a little rough chop. I mean, and I want some big bits and some small bits. I want a mixture of textures, as we say. You know, you could go a bit wild if you wanted to with this. They might not be hazelnuts, they might be, I don't know, walnuts, chestnuts. Oh, chestnuts would be good at Christmas, wouldn't they? You could put a few chestnuts on the top. Anyway, I've gone massively off piece. Actually, as the wild mushrooms come to a finish through the winter, sort of go half and half, do half mushrooms and half chestnuts. That'd be quite nice, make it a little bit more festive if it was getting towards that time of year. I've got this lovely, lovely, delicious, creamy, pheasanty, venison-y, pheasanty venison. I've got this lovely venison mixture here, and I've got way more than's going to fit in my little squashes. Whatever you cook these on, serve them on it, because if you try and move them, what happens is the bottom falls out, which is quite funny, but it's not the most attractive thing in the world. So just stuff that in there like that, you know, hence the name, stuffed. And then I got my lovely fresh breadcrumbs, so these are not too dry. If you wanted to add a bit of cheese, you could. I think I'll just put a little drizzle of olive oil in here, a little drizzle of olive oil on those so that they toast and don't burn. Some hazelnuts, just have those. And I think I might just go completely bananas. Put some more sage and some more thyme in with them as well, just to pimp them up a little bit. Maybe some parsley. What do you think? A bit of parsley?
Yes.
Got a bit of that kicking around. Well, you know, as you know, you are my culinary consultant. I would never dream of making anything without consulting you. See how quickly I got that bowl? I'll just mix that together. It's making a little, and you know, if there's some of this left over, just pop it in a little tub, stick it in the fridge or the freezer, and use it the next time you want some sort of crispy herby thing put on the top of something. Remember, it's got nuts in it, so we'll just literally just stuff a load of this on the top. And I'm being quite vigorous because I want to make sure that any sort of gaps inside the squashes have been really filled up by that. Well, no, well, not unless we get sort of rupturing scenario going on. And then if you wanted to, you could sort of be a bit poncy about it and stick those on the top. And I'll just rinse my hands while you fling them back in the oven for a quick roast. Oh yes, it's your chance to shine, Tim. Oh, look, the door's got you, that's good. And they just want 10 minutes in there, nice and hot, to do their thing. Yes, it's as easy as that. Oh, they're nicely toasted up, look, and they're all bubbly and hot, steamy inside. And they just look like, you know, really good fun, and they smell amazing. Brilliant.
For more about the work of the Country Food Trust, go to thecountryfoodtrust.org, and you will find a link to the recipe in the description below. Thank you, the Tims, and the Country Food Trust is in the middle of its winter appeal. Details on the CFT website. And thanks very much to the Loyton Shoot in Devon for letting us use their wonderful Shoot Lodge kitchen. Next, dog theft, machinery theft, vandalism, arson and poaching are all crimes that people in the countryside deal with. And sometimes it feels like they are too far down the priority list. In one part of the country, farmers, gamekeepers and the police are working together to patrol country lanes, and they seem to be making a difference. News editor Ben went out with Northumbria Police's rural crime team to see how it works.
This footage comes from a poacher's camera. It's not clear whether the dog survived hitting a piece of farm machinery.
Boot is dead. No way.
The poaching problem has grown across the country over the past few years, and Northumbria Police are cracking down on it.
You're quite close, are you?
About 8 minutes out.
It's about 11:30 on a Wednesday night and Operation Checkpoint is in full swing. It's a programme that began about 3 years ago that brings in volunteers from farms and estates to help combat crime in the countryside.
Tonight we're going to do a rural crime operation. It's called Operation Checkpoint. It's part of a national and a regional operation where basically it's targeting criminality in the rural areas. That could be anything from travelling rural criminals, looking to steal things like ATVs, to your poaching offences.
Generally people tend to think of a poacher as being a bit like green grass, taking one for the pot. You know, well that's very much not the case. We are seeing a bit of, you know, there is an element of some kids who come out and they might be doing it for a bit of a laugh, but vast majority of the poaching that we see is that they do have links to organised criminality. They are out scoping things out. They will use it as an excuse to look at, you know, a quad bike.
As we've shown previously on Fieldsports Britain, poaching gangs across the country break into fields and go after anything they see. Besides the illegal killing of animals, the culprits are showing off their dogs.
A good dog can be worth a lot of money to them, and there's a lot of kudos attached to a good dog. If they do stop a car and quite clear they're all poaching, they've got game in the car, they've got dogs in the car, they've got lamps. We'll seize everything, we'll seize their car and we'll also seize their dogs.
The rural crime volunteers will plot up in basically areas where they've got a vantage point, so they can look across the land and see what's going on in their patches. They'll go to places where they know they've been targeted before, for example, you've had locks on gates to fields being cut and stuff like that.
First stop on any patrol is meeting the volunteers.
We've given all the volunteers like a point to come collect the radio. We'll collect them back up at the end of the night. So the minute Alex is just dishing out the radios there, writing down who's got what radio so we can collect them in and we're sort of accountable. We ask them why you're doing it and they say, well, basically because you know, I can either sit at home and moan about it, or I can actually try and help and do something about it, and that's the general attitude. You always get that answer.
A problem they have is the size of the area. More trained volunteers means more people qualified to stand up in court to give evidence after suspected poachers have been caught.
It's difficult to prove what they've actually been doing, and you'll generally get some like rubbish story, you know, that's made up, and yes, you can pick it apart to an extent, but again, we've always got that
difficulty in that we've got to prove everything we do beyond reasonable doubt. It's got to stand up to scrutiny in court, and it's got to be, if that person has a story that sort of could be a half-truth, the chances are they're not going to get convicted at court.
Ian spots a van, one of the types of vehicles they look out for, as they are often used in quad bike thefts.
Control from 1071. Can I have a vehicle check on a red Transit?
It turns out the van is registered to a house in the area, so we move on. Throughout the night there are other reports of suspicious vehicles. A volunteer calls in a car on a remote road, but it's just 3 young men getting stoned. So far, no sign of poachers.
The lamp, usually after the deer, the hares, especially these fields here, because you've got roads right the way around them, so they're easy accessible. Farmer was telling us a couple of weeks ago that he found dead hares on the field, tyre marks on the fields, making just such a mess. But they're going after anything to get their hands on.
Don't get me wrong, we're culling deer on the estate. They're a pest in a sense. So from a wildlife perspective, it's not a massive loss, but there is a massive loss in terms of how they're being killed, which is pretty tragic. And the carcasses just get left. It's a long way from this. Well, I want some venison, so I'm going to kill a deer. It's kill it, take a picture of it, and leave it.
It was a lot worse 2 or 3 years ago. The initiative that's been started by the police and the rural crime volunteers has definitely paid dividends to that work. But yeah, it's ongoing. There's always people willing to trying to break the law.
And then I guess probably the most costly damage is the damage to the gates. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. You put a gate in to stop them coming into these fields. You put a gate in, they smash the gates up, and you have to either replace the gates or find a different solution. So.
For farmer John Goodfellow, poachers destroyed one gate too many.
In the past we used to padlock gates, and one day I went past a gate that had been padlocked and saw someone had chopped it off with an angle grinder. So I went back a couple of days later to replace the padlock, and the gates had been stolen. So at that point I realised gates were no longer going to solve the problem.
So John invented this, Poacher Block, a concrete slab that stops cars getting into fields.
The original casts didn't work quite right, and I didn't know that there was a substance called releasing oil. So when I first poured the concrete into the mould, I couldn't get the concrete back out again. So it was all a bit of a steep learning curve, but it didn't take long before I had something that I knew was marketable. I spent a long time going around measuring different tractors and stuff because I wanted something universal that would fit all tractors, which I couldn't quite do. Little tractors won't have the clearance to go over, but most tractors now are over 120 horsepower in there all right with it. In development at the minute is Poacher Gate, which is the same block design but with gate posts built into it so that you could put it on a livestock situation.
Back on patrol, Ian gets a call about a suspicious vehicle.
We're just trying to we use an application called What Three Words, so we're just trying to get a location where this suspicious vehicle...
Tweaked, as in we've tweaked where we're going. Dot weeds, as in digging up unwanted plants. Dot guitar, play a song.
Then we're off. The car is several miles away, so Ian isn't wasting any time.
The vehicle's showing no insurance on the police national computer, which is quite often a telltale sign of something that's up no good. It's got 4 persons in it, and it's from an area that will frequently get people travelling across to our area to do poaching and the like. So there's about 3 or 4 units travelling there at the minute.
About 20 minutes later, we're at the location. We're not the only ones there. Another 2 police cars and 2 volunteer vehicles.
Hello, what is it?
Oh, they're getting COVID. They're just legally greened in and they've got insurance.
What's the attitude like?
Huh?
Attitude?
Canny.
It turns out they do have insurance and are legally green laning or off-road driving. But since there are 4 of them in the car, they're breaking coronavirus restrictions and each is slapped with a £200 fine. While it wasn't the result they were expecting, it did show the coordination between the cops and the volunteers is working. A better result comes about half an hour later when they stop a suspicious van that's carting off a quad bike.
The rural crime team I might be put right on this, but it certainly seems to have grown, and they're taking much more sort of direct approach with the poachers, which is a massive help. And there's a knock-on effect of that. Obviously, you get more success when you're trying to look after your patch.
I think we've started something very special here, and I think it's got a long way to go, and we've got a lot to learn, and I think the police have got a lot to learn, and I think the joint collaboration that we're showing now is going a long way to reassuring rural communities that the police care.
Thank you, Ben. Hope that helps you off your next speeding ticket. Now, from the mean streets of the rural northeast to the wider world of hunting and shooting on YouTube, it is Hunting YouTube. This is Hunting YouTube, which aims to show the best hunting and shooting videos that YouTube has to offer. Deer stalking pro Owen Beardsmore and party go out after red stags in Scotland in this film on the Service UK channel. The film is well made by his son Dan. Testing driven pheasants next. Tweeds and pheasants face the highest birds he has shot in this film. More bird shooting. Long time watcher, first time emailer Ollie Taylor sends me Stephen Rinella and his friend Ronnie Bain hunting the mountains of Montana for dusky grouse. Thanks to Rob Pollock for this film about crossbows. Top shot Dustin is trying out a bow that shoots a bolt at 440 feet per second, but my and Rob's favourite part is the turkey that steals the show. Here is a heartwarming story. American hunter Donnie Vincent finds a caribou bull tangled up in rope while he's out in his canoe on the Bering Sea off Alaska, and being a good sportsman, he cuts it free. Howie Halliday in New Zealand is shooting rabbits over his dogs Archie, Flynn and Tess with friends John and Peter, and sends me this. Thanks, Howie, and happy Christmas to you too. G'day Charlie, says Lee Baragwena from Australia. Calling the Wild has the Bolt Action Productions team camping out to get after foxes and a close-up on a sandbar. And finally, we often find ourselves answering the question, what damage do grey squirrels do? This film provides the answer, thanks to John Buxton for suggesting it, which is, as he says, worth promoting. That's it for this week. I've put all these films into a playlist for you. Click on the I symbol top right or check this film's description. If you have a YouTube film you would like us to pop into the weekly top 8, email me the link, charlie@fieldsportschannel.tv. Well, that's it for this week. If you haven't done so already, please whiz over to our website, fieldsportschannel.tv, where you can click like us on Facebook and on Instagram. You can follow us on Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube. You can support us via the Fieldsports Nation. Films like Ben's Poacher Patrol film are paid for entirely by the Fieldsports Nation. And you can pop your email into our register page, and we'll send you our free weekly newsletter about our show. Fieldsports Britain is at 7 p.m. UK time every Wednesday. And so, as we make the final 1 week canter towards Christmas, may I wish you good hunting, good shooting, good fishing, and goodbye.